So NASCAR has officially released its 2022 schedule today, and while not as big of a departure as the 2021 schedule was, there's certainly still a lot to talk about. Two of the most important points in these will be the points that perhaps we are going to harp on the most is, while indeed the Indianapolis Motor Speedway will remain as a road course for 2022, the talk of the town is all of a sudden that the Oval may be returning soon for the NASCAR Cup Series. So we'll be talking about that, as well as the fact that the possibility for Kyle Larson to do the Indianapolis 500 has been made much easier. So welcome back to the channel. Been doing a lot of videos recently, but that's kind of what happens when the schedules for next year begin to come out. There's all sorts of things to talk about. You will be seeing the schedule scrolling on the bottom of the screen in case I don't mention something that perhaps you are interested in hearing about. But this allows me to give you a much broader overview of the schedule and also at the same time be able to hone in on some of the events I actually want to talk about. Now, obviously, yesterday we talked full video, so go check that out if you want to hear about the Clash moving to the LA Memorial Coliseum. Certainly had some thoughts on that. I'll give you a brief summary here before, unless you want to go listen to a 10-minute video, of course, and you should, is that I think it's going to be ultimately a short-term good move for sure because it's going to give NASCAR fans and NASCAR themselves exactly what they want. It's a move away from tradition, there's no doubt about it, but NASCAR really, quite frankly, hasn't been about tradition for a very long time. So if they're going to chase eyeballs, this is probably the best way to do it. I think it'll be a much more exciting show than the traditional Clash has been over the last few years. So Circuit of the Americas is also moving its date. They are moving up to March 27th. Now, that's important for later because in the past, or last year, I should say, in the past, well, this year, last year, whatever you want to call it, Circuit of the Americas was in the month of May and actually presented a clash, ironically, with Indianapolis 500 time trials. With that points race moving out of May, it has opened up a possibility. And that possibility is that Kyle Larson could, if he wanted to, and of course Roger Penske and Rick Hendrick and all of the folks involved in that decision-making process, could theoretically see Larson be able to do the Indianapolis 500 because on the qualification weekend, which you guys know, if you've followed this channel for any length of time, is so very important to the Indianapolis 500 because there are no locked-in spots. You can't just buy your way in. So Kyle Larson would have to qualify for the Indianapolis 500, and traditionally for Cup Series regulars, the difficulty has been qualifying for the race, not necessarily so much doing the double. It's when you have 36 or more cars going for 33 spots, you can't just half-ass the practice and qualifying for the 500 because you'll miss the show. So the NASCAR schedule has Texas Motor Speedway, the All-Star race, moved to May 22nd, which is, of course, this qualification weekend for the Indianapolis 500. And, of course, that will happen at night. And Indy 500 time trials typically start at noon. So you think about it, and Larson could qualify in the morning for the 500. As long as he had a safe-ish speed, he wouldn't have to worry about coming back the next day. Depending on whether or not he got into the Fast 9, of course, that would be another question mark, of course, because then he'd have to come back on Sunday. But I think it would be possible for sure. As long as he posted a safe speed and got in the show, he could run the All-Star race at Texas, which I don't think they ever have any practice or qualifying for those events anyway, so you don't have to worry about, you wouldn't have to worry about the week leading up to the 500. You could practice all the way through. You could qualify, and then, of course, the double would be a little bit difficult, of course, but I think, Tony Stewart did it, John Andretti did it, Robbie Gordon did it, Kurt Busch did it, so I have no doubt in my mind that Kyle Larson could do it if he wanted to do it. And I sure hope, because obviously the dearly departed Robin Miller in a lot of ways made it his last wish that Kyle Larson would race for Roger Penske at the Indianapolis 500. the possibility is there. The timing is there. It could be done. I hope it gets done if there's at all any interest. Okay, another event we did a video on yesterday that you can check out if you want to hear in more detail, but Gateway will be the next race after the Coca-Cola 600 on June 5th. Now, that Gateway race is taking away one of the Pocono races. Of course, Pocono has been a doubleheader. They haven't had two separate dates for quite a while on the calendar, but yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about the future of Pocono. It's going to depend whether they can get some bigger events, I think, but also at the same time, they're in the middle of the mountains. So we'll see how that goes. But I think Gateway, again, just going to give you some brief thoughts because there's a much longer video that you can watch, is that I think that Gateway will produce... it'll produce a big crowd. I'm curious to see how the next-gen car races on that track. But, of course, I'm curious to see how the next-gen car races on every track. So it's not necessarily limited to whether or not, the next-gen car is a good race car, or whether, Gateway's a good race. It's going to be dependent on a whole lot more factors. But I think ultimately it's a good story because Gateway has worked so hard. They worked their asses off to promote the IndyCar race that they have there. I'm sure they're going to do the same thing for NASCAR, and it's a good thing for the sport. Okay, so the Indianapolis Road Course will run again on the NASCAR Cup Series side of things. It will be a doubleheader with IndyCar, and it will be on July 31st. So if you're wearing sneakers, just prepare for them to melt to the asphalt because, boy, oh boy, it's going to be hot. Maybe we'll get lucky in a rain or something, but boy, it's probably going to be absolutely horrible conditions. But that's not what I'm talking about, the Indianapolis Road Course for NASCAR, because we had a couple of tweets from Jenna Fryer which kind of broke this news that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is looking at hosting an oval race once again for the NASCAR Cup Series. Surprise, surprise. The TV ratings dip and for the road course race, and suddenly we're talking about the oval race coming back. I think, while I won't say it was a predictable outcome, I will say this. The Brickyard 400 has name recognition. With normies, you have to consider that those of us who watch YouTube, participate on NASCAR Twitter, read forums dedicated to racing, well, I don't want to say we're like the minority. We probably represent about half of the audience. The other half of the audience, they tune into races and then they stop thinking about it. But big races attract more viewers. That always is the case. And races with name recognition attract more viewers. So, if let's say your uncle watches, NASCAR kind of casually, what race is he more likely to tune in for? The Brickyard 400 or the Verizon 200? I know one sounds like an Xfinity race to me, and the other one sounds like a NASCAR Cup Series event, and thus the Brickyard 400 tends to get more viewers. It, of course, also is a race that had a 30-year history going up into this year. How many races even get to 30 runnings or 30 consecutive years? So, yes, the crowds were never great, or they haven't been great in the last few years. Was the crowd for the road course much better? That's the question. I read an Indy Star article today by Nathan Brown that claimed that they had 120,000 attendees over the weekend, but of course that includes the Xfinity race and the IndyCar race, and that also would, I'm sure, double count a few people. I don't know where they were counting 100,000 people, but I don't know. I don't know what 100,000 people looks like. I mean, they claimed there was 100,000 people at the Indy 500 this year, but it looked like a whole lot more to me. I don't know. So, yeah, I think that, as soon as I saw that the TV rating dipped for the Brickyard, I kind of felt like the writing was on the wall because I felt like NBC was going to freak out about it. The question, of course, is Roger Penske. And as far as I know, Roger Penske is very adamant that the one race on the oval should be the Indy 500. Of course, that's not counting, like the autonomous race that's going to run on the oval with the driverless cars later this year. But I think that was planned well in advance of even Penske buying the facility. So I think about it, and, you know, I mean, this is tough, right? Because the oval has the tradition, the oval has the name recognition. But again, you know, I'm of the opinion that things are going to change in NASCAR pretty significantly. So do you want to have a road course race? Do you want to have an oval race with tradition, even if it's kind of boring? I don't know. And the other thing, of course, is probably going to be very, very dependent on how the next-gen car races. If the next-gen car is amazing on road courses and terrible on ovals, particularly flat ovals, you're probably not going to want to run the Brickyard 400 with the next-gen cars. But if they run that one Pocono race, which of course Pocono is the most similar track to Indianapolis, or maybe even Gateway, because that is a similar track to Indianapolis in a few elements, and they put on an amazing show, then why on earth wouldn't you send the next-gen cars to the oval? Because it'll probably be an amazing show. And I also wonder a little bit is, will the road course races with the next-gen car be stinkers? Because they have done a lot of things to the cars. They've stiffened them up. That's one of the things that we've consistently heard about the next-gen cars. I can't remember if the tires are wider. I want to be very careful on saying that. But I believe I had heard, I think it was Kurt Busch, like really, really early on in the testing for the next-gen car, said the car was going to have a lot of grip. Of course, they have a sequential shifter now. It's going to be a lot more like a supercar in Australia than a stock car, a traditional stock car, on the road courses. But I do wonder if that's going to take a little bit of the randomness out of NASCAR road racing and kind of turn it into a little bit more of a procession. I wonder about that, because at some point, if you make the cars, you know, grip the road or be very, very stuck to the ground, suddenly the thing that's going to make the difference is aero and dirty air. Could we have dirty air on road courses next year? We'll see. That's something I wonder about. But yeah, so if it's a stinker again on the IMS road course, and couple that with the fact that if the next-gen car is awesome on flat super speedways, then we will see the Brickyard on the oval next year, or in 2023. But I think NBC is going to push for it anyway. So the final thing on this schedule that we need to talk about is Homestead Miami moving to the playoffs again, but not the season finale. But I think most people would be in agreement that Homestead being early in the season and only having one race, that was never going to work. It wasn't full-on rip Homestead. Love you, Black Flags Matter. But you know, I think it's going to be much more prestigious in the playoffs. It's just disappointing that NASCAR blocked IndyCar from running at Homestead as well. Come on, guys. Play nice. Okay. Wow. By the way, speaking of IndyCar, we will be talking about that schedule that's not official, but Racer is probably about 95% of the way there. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content from me, and we'll see you in the next video.